Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the PhinManiacs.com podcast. I am your host, Louis Song, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Chad Ronenbaum, and we will be joined a little bit later by Ron Caniff, otherwise known as Finn Broadcaster or Unsquish the Fish, or whatever you want to call him. And so we got a little more to talk about this week. Let's see. First and foremost, Frank Gore. He's finally come home, ladies and gentlemen. We've been calling for it. We've been wanting it, and now as he's about to get to 35 years of age, he's finally going to finish his career in Miami. So got some mixed feelings on that on Twitter, I saw, but I personally like it. We'll discuss more about that a little bit later. And then there's the Brock Osweiler 1-year deal, and we haven't gotten the numbers on that, so I'm a little wary about all that, but we'll see what happens there. I have some personal thoughts about that as well, and we'll get into that. They re-signed Sam Young to a 1-year deal. We made it official that William Hayes has been re-signed to a 1-year deal, and there's like 1-year deals all around, and Ndamukong Suh has been signed to the Rams on $14 million. Man, that's going to be some defense. And we'll also talk about some of the draft prospects that the Dolphins have brought in to visit. Plenty to talk about, and we'll see where the discussion goes as we continue the show. So now, if you guys want to interact with us, you can go ahead and do so by going to the YouTube live chat. Will be available for you. Yep, I see you, Don Lashley. Hello to you too, good sir. And if you want to talk with us, you can use the chat, or you can use the hashtag on Twitter, hashtag PhinManiacsLive. And if you decide that you actually want to go one step further, you can go ahead and call in at 954-376-5704. That is 954-376-5704. We'll be taking callers all throughout the night. So if you have a couple of questions you want to ask us, feel free to do so. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started. And I did see Ron pop in on my Skype here. So let me just go ahead and get him in on the show here, pull him up here, and add to call. So we're going to be starting with the Frank Gore topic. So, Chad, I'm going to go ahead and let you go first as soon as I see if Ron picks up. He's dialing. It's ringing. Okay, you know what? Just go ahead, Ron. Chad, not Ron. Chad. Yeah. Go ahead, Chad. Talk about Frank Gore.
Well, Frank Gore is an almost no-risk signing because he's signed for the league veteran minimum. And so you can't get any cheaper than that for a vet like that. And so I suspect Miami's going to still draft a running back. Running back is it's one of those positions where it's so easy to get hurt because you're just going to take a beating by the nature of the position. And so Kenyon Drake, he's still a very young back. I think Kenyon Drake still has a lot to learn, probably from pass protection to reading cutback lanes and things like that. And so pairing him with a vet like Frank Gore, I don't see anything but a positive. And again, I suspect Miami's still looking. There's just a lot of depth in this draft in the middle rounds, and so I really think Miami's going to take a back somewhere between rounds 3 through 5. And so if you end up with Frank Gore, a rookie back, and Kenyon Drake, that's almost the perfect blend that I think you could have. So I'm happy. And the final note with that is I just don't like using Kenyon Drake on short yardage. Not that he can't do it, but the beauty of Kenyon Drake is he's so fast. He's one of those running backs that can score once you get him out in space. And so I hate taking a running back like Kenyon Drake and slamming him up the middle to try to get a 3rd and 1 converted. And somebody like Frank Gore is ideal to convert downs like that. So I am very, very favorable. I actually liked it better than DeMarco Murray for the pick because you get a lot of hometown feel with it. Frank Gore went to the U, and it's really kind of a special thing that if he can come to Miami and end his career. And don't lose sight of the fact he's the 5th rusher of all time. I know he's played a lot of years, but to be doing what he's doing at 35 at that position, it's very impressive. And so it ought to be a lot of fun to have him on the Dolphins this year.
Oh, sorry. I muted my mic for a second there. Okay, we actually have a caller, and it's not Ron, but it is another good friend of ours from a while back. Keith Beebe returns to PhinManiacs Live. How are you, Keith?
I'm good. I actually beat Ron here. That's horrible.
No, yeah, Ron's running a little late. He's texting me now saying, I'm coming. But anyway, so how are you doing, brother?
I'm good. How are you guys?
We're hanging in there. We're hanging in there. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. We just finished Chad talking about Frank Gore. So as long as you're here, what are your thoughts on the Frank Gore signing? 1-year deal, minimum signing. Personally, I'm all for it. I think this is a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you could have much of a problem with it. I mean, he's still producing. I mean, people will go ahead and bring up his age, but I mean, his numbers speak for themselves at this point. I mean, you bring him in. I mean, it's short term. I mean, there's no risk with it, and I mean, you give yourself a body, and I mean, you're not getting Kenyon Drake beaten down as a result. So it allows you to kind of sort of create a cushion in that regard. So I'm all for it.
Yeah, and I did see that a few people are actually not as for it as I thought they would be. Now, I understand the problem. A lot of people were saying that Frank Gore he's too old. He's not the guy that you want. He's coming here just to finish his career. And you know what? Even if that last bit is true, like this is the argument that I had with a lot of people when they announced the signing. Like everybody was upset that Frank Gore, they signed a 34 going on 35-year-old running back. But the thing about Frank Gore is that he is like this weird exception to the running back rule. A lot of people think that once you hit 30 years old, your career as a running back is long done. Like for some people look at you like you're 28 and you're already ancient for a running back. So if Frank Gore is ancient for running backs, and he's practically father time itself. So at 2017, he ran for 961 yards. He only averaged 3.7 yards a carry, but he was the workhorse back for the Colts, and they cut him because he was going to be making too much money, if I recall correctly. So, oh no, I'm sorry, I'm talking about DeMarco Murray that they cut. No, Frank Gore just ran out of contract, I think. So
no, he's ancient for that position, but I mean, and this is a little bit of a cliche at this point, but if you want the culture change, you don't play the running back position for over a decade unless you're putting in work. So I imagine that, I mean, you're getting a leader by example. You're getting by somebody. I mean, he still produces. It's not like they're grabbing somebody who did absolutely nothing last year. So I mean, I don't know. I mean, you don't have to love it. You don't have to be in love with this move, but I don't see how anything bad comes from it.
And now we have Ron joining us. Ron, there you are, brother. Keith actually beat you in here. A caller beat you.
Oh, I was like, I recognize that voice. That voice sounds so familiar to me. What's up? Yeah, I'm here.
All right. So
it's been so long.
How you doing, Keith?
I'm good.
Good, man.
So we're talking Frank Gore here, Ron. So what are your thoughts on the signing and what you think about what that means for the Dolphins?
Well, I mean, they were looking to sign a vet for the room. It's a young room. We knew they needed to add talent. I still hope it just doesn't keep them from wanting to add talent to the draft. I mean, even like a second-round guy, third-round guy. I know we want to draft about 7 different positions with our second and third-round picks. We want tight end, we want running back, we want a quarterback, we need a linebacker, maybe another cornerback, you know. But I hope it doesn't keep them from doing that because they still need to add another guy. I mean, Gore's just a 1-year rental.
Oh, yeah, I'm positive that they're going to be looking at other possibilities at the running back position. Don Lashley in the chat is talking about how Drake plus Gore and drafting Rashad Penny from SDSU would be his ideal backfield. So I don't know much about Rashad Penny, and I think the only person in here who's like extensively draft backgrounded is Keith. So do you know anything about Rashad Penny?
Yeah, he's a guy that would definitely fit what the Dolphins are looking for in terms of a complement to Kenyon Drake. He'd probably be a top 3 back for me in that regard. I mean, this is a really good draft in terms of what the Dolphins need in that backfield. So, and it doesn't need to be done until late day 2, early day 3. Like, I mean, I've seen some people who are into like Darius Geis and whatnot, and I get that. I mean, he's an awesome player, but in terms of what they're looking for, I mean, they've got the home run hitter in their backfield right now. So now you're looking for, more like maybe like a bell cow type build, but a guy who can definitely like share the load, keep a lot of the rough stuff off Kenyon Drake in terms of wear. So I like Penny. I think that'd be an awesome pick. You would not hear any complaint from me if that happened.
Well, that's a good thing, I think. And you know what, man? I know Ron said something about how we want to seemingly cover everything in the draft, and I can understand that reasoning. So now, since we're already talking about the draft, we'll go ahead and let the conversation shift that way. Now, we're saying that we want to cover everything in the draft, but here is the main problem: is that we want to cover everything in the draft, but we see everybody seems to have this different set of priorities for what needs to be drafted first in the draft. For a lot of people, we're looking at replacing Ndamukong Suh, which means that we want to draft defensive tackle in the first round or in the second round, which means that Vita Vea, I don't know how do you pronounce his name? Vita Vea, I think. So
You're good.
So Vita Vea in the first round, and maybe somebody else in the second, maybe someone like a Rashad Evans, who actually was actually brought to the facility to be talking to the team for a little bit and see what makes him tick. And or you could look at, let's see, people are looking at safety and they kind of want to get their hands on Minkah Fitzpatrick or Derwin James. And of course, there is the ever popular quarterback pick, and the Dolphins have brought in both Baker Mayfield and Josh Rosen to be checked out. So there's a lot of talk there. Or some people think that quarterback can be looked at in the mid rounds, and they're looking at Luke Falk, and a lot of people have mixed feelings on him. Some people think he's a career backup. Some people think he has real NFL talent. I don't know who to believe because I haven't watched Luke Falk myself, but it's kind of an up and down situation. Depending on who you are and what you believe in for the team, your priority seems to shift in the draft. We do want to get everything, but what's more important? I'm actually, you know what? Let's go ahead and talk about that. Ron, what's number one on your priority list in the draft this year?
Well, for first round, honestly, I hate to say this, I don't want to see him draft a quarterback in the first round. I guess I'll put it to you this way. I don't think that's their intention. So I'm kind of going with the thought that that's not their intention to draft a quarterback in the first round. I guess if somebody really they loved, fell to them, that makes sense. But I'd like to see him really build like a really nice best player available defensive player in the first round. Weaver was a DB, a linebacker, defensive tackle. That's what I'd like to see for the first round.
Okay, but that's the what if let's pretend that one of each position was available at 11. Which one would you want?
Probably defensive tackle. Honestly, I kind of feel like with Sue gone, it leaves such a big hole, and the line play is so important, and especially that position. And we really. I think we really need to continue to build this defense. Wake is getting older. He'll be gone soon. We don't have Sue anymore. We need that anchor guy in the middle. I'd like to see that. But next, if there wasn't that, I'd like to see a linebacker.
All right. How about you, Keith?
I'm pretty much right with him. And it's not – I've seen a couple of people say it on Twitter that it's like the defensive tackle – need is sort of like a panic reaction to Sue. It's not that. It's more so the fact that you have some talented guys at that position, but it's still a position you can add to, and there are some knockout prospects who could be available at 11. So I think that it's something to be considered. And I mentioned this on Twitter a couple of weeks ago, but if you watch Vita Vea's tape, it's intoxicating. Like his game against UCLA is just stupid good. There's stuff on there that a 350 pound guy shouldn't be able to do. So that part of it's awesome. The linebacker thing too. You got Raekwon coming back next year. You have a chance to really install a piece next to him and get something pretty special in that linebacker core. The one thing that I haven't seen a lot of people mention right now is this is the best our secondary has looked in years. I can't remember the last time we went into a draft, and it's like, honestly, if we don't take anyone in the secondary, it's okay. You can upgrade. I've had that conversation with quite a few people regarding, say, like a Denzel Ward, or if somehow Minkah Fitzpatrick slid to 11 overall, who are you going to part ways with in terms of, are you moving guys around? I think that with 11, and they're not getting one of the top 4 quarterbacks at 11. I just want to make that clear, unless they trade up for him. I imagine that if one of the 4 QBs makes it past Denver, which I think is likely, I think Buffalo immediately they're looking for Indianapolis. They're looking to trade with either them or Tampa at 7 and Chicago at 8. I don't think Chicago really would want to move because I think that they like some of those guys at that spot. So I think if you're sitting at 11, you get a cornerstone defensive player. There are quite a few guys available. I don't mean worst case scenario, but if Roquan Smith is there, I mean, that is an unbelievable addition, and a lot of people are kind of booing him a little bit just because they perceive him to have a lack of size, but I think that eventually he becomes Kiko Alonso's replacement. So, I mean, I'm with Ron, defensive tackle, linebacker. If something gets crazy and the right guy in the secondary is there and you want to take a chance, that's fine too. But you can add a special player to the defense at 11.
Chad?
I'm still not there's so much smoke and mirrors going on. I'm still not convinced that all 4 quarterbacks are going to go. I mean, it would appear to be that way, but that's really the story of this draft right now. And I find it hard to believe, despite all the meetings and the reports, that Miami's that interested in Baker Mayfield. I just don't think that's the case. I think they're really wanting that to be the feel for the draft, because I think Miami really wants 4 quarterbacks going before they pick, because they're looking at the way the players fall down the board from there. And so I do think they're targeting a defensive player with that pick. I don't have any issue with Vita Vea. I watched film on him too, and he's a tremendous bull rusher. Like he continuously moves the line of scrimmage back, and so he's a guy, if you bring him in, it really helps you win the battle of the trench with which way the push goes. He's definitely not an Ndamukong Suh type player where he's really quick at getting in on a quarterback, but absolutely capable of dominating the interior between the center and the guard, which is really a big concern right now for the Dolphins with Suh gone. I'm not comfortable right now with Jordan Phillips and Godshaw as our 2 starting D tackles. I don't know. It just makes me a little nervous. Teams are just going to try to power run up the middle on that combo right now, and we definitely need to add some depth at the defensive tackle position. So it would be a good, strong fit need to go with him. But I still can't take – I think Miami can draft a D tackle maybe in the 2nd or 3rd round that would still be a big, strong body that would be hard to move, and we'd probably be better off if Roquan Smith is there. I've been watching a lot of film on him, and he's tremendous. I mean, it's been back and forth. I watched some Tremaine Edmonds, and he's absolutely unbelievably fast for his size. But I think Roquan Smith's a lot more of a complete linebacker. You put him with Kiko and McMillan right now, that would be a really good 3 linebackers in there. And I think that's today's NFL. I made this point on Twitter a couple days ago that I don't want a linebacker in there that's a tank that runs over guards, because everybody's worried about his size. I want a linebacker that can run sideline to sideline, can do some pass coverage, and a lot of these teams run these stretch run plays now where the running back picks their lane, and he looks ideal to shut that kind of run down. And as much as people have been on Kiko's a very fast linebacker. He struggled in pass coverage man to man, yes, but him on the field with those 2, we'd have a very fast athletic linebacker core, and we haven't had that in a long time in Miami. So I have a really hard time not getting Roquan Smith if he's available there. And if he's not, I think Fitzpatrick would be a tremendous addition. We've talked in the past about maybe running some 3 safety sets where you might bring McDonald up in the box to kind of be that weak side linebacker and cover tight ends, and use Fitzpatrick and Rashad Jones in the backfield. I think that makes sense. So I think for Miami, the only thing I wouldn't like to see is I don't want to see them mortgage the future to jump up and grab one of these quarterbacks, because for one, unless Tannehill gets hurt, it's a player that'll be contributing nothing throughout the year. And I just think, what's the point of bringing in Adam Gase if you have to get these top quarterback prospects? He should be able to take a Rudolph or a White or one of these quarterbacks that are kind of the second echelon in the grouping. And I expect somebody like Adam Gase to be able to develop them over the next year or 2. So if Tannehill moves on or doesn't work out, then we have another quarterback. And we mentioned this last week, kind of like the way Jimmy Garoppolo or AJ McCarron, that way. And I can't imagine if you're going to move up to go get Baker Mayfield or Josh Rosen or something, you make that move and you're giving up all them resources. You have to be doing it with the intent for that guy to be your starter within the next year or so. And I don't see that being where Miami's at all right now. I think they're behind Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Tannehill is the starter, and so I would be very surprised unless one of those guys fall to 11. I'd be very surprised if Miami quarterbacks. I think it's almost got to be D tackle or linebacker or safety with that 11th overall pick.
Well, Don Lashley in the chat says that he thinks that Buffalo moves up to number 2 to draft Rosen, which means 3 quarterbacks get drafted with the first 3 picks. And if the Broncos pass, he thinks that either Josh Allen or Baker Mayfield could fall. Okay, here's the thing with Josh Allen. Let's just for the sake of full disclosure, I did recently a mock draft. It was the only mock draft that I've done all off season because I'm not big into doing a new mock draft every other day because I don't believe that really that makes much of a difference, and it kind of drives us crazy because like we really hone in on the first picks anyway. So when I did that mock draft, I went after a linebacker first. The first linebacker, the only player that I would have liked that was left on the board. I used the CBS board and I put it on hard because Duke told me the CBS board is good, so I did that. And the only player that was left that I really liked was Tremaine Edwards. Roquan Smith had already gone, and Minkah Fitzpatrick had already gone. Derwin James had already gone. All of those other guys had already gone. The only one left was Tremaine Edmonds. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to grab him before it's too late. Mayfield, the quarterbacks had been gone. All except for Josh Allen. Now, I expected, okay, some team's going to grab Allen in this mock draft. It's like, there's no way he's going to fall out of the first round. We've been talking quarterbacks all year. And nope, Josh Allen didn't get picked in the first round. According to our little fan speak mock draft thing, Josh Allen made it all the way to the second. In fact, I was able to draft Josh Allen in the second round with that pick. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, somebody's really low on Josh Allen. And a lot of people that I've seen talk about him are saying that he's got a cannon for an arm, but basically he doesn't know what to do with it. And that, in my mind, is a problem. You can throw the ball as hard as you can throw the ball 100 yards down the field. You can go from end zone to end zone with that arm. But if you can't control where you're throwing it, it's really not going to do much for you because who knows where it's going to land. So I'm thinking that Josh Allen, like if we're really going to wind up taking one of those quote unquote top quarterbacks, then I probably would want to pick Josh Allen, but only if he falls out of the first round, which I still don't expect to happen because quarterbacks are still quarterbacks and lots of teams value quarterbacks no matter what. So if I'm going to pick a quarterback and if Allen or even Lamar Jackson are there in the second, which I'm doubtful of, then yes, I'll go for it. But otherwise, I'm just going to target Luke Falk and try to get somebody of a higher grade talent in the first and second rounds on defense. So, and by the way, let's be honest here for a second. How many people are wanting Roquan Smith just for the sake of trying to hear Bob Greasy and Nat Moore talk about Roquan or Raekwon on the same defense?
I say that we go with these 2 nicknames. We've got the Quan Stars. I've heard that, so I'm down for that one. And then I came up with Wrath of Quan. I thought that one was pretty tight. So I'm down just for the cool nicknames that we can do.
That would be a fantastic tandem, though, if you got Raekwon and Roquan together. To Chad's point, Kiko is definitely a viable guy. But in terms of, I feel like it would be cheating Roquan Smith to not put him in at will linebacker at the pro level just because of his speed, his ability to flow to the ball. He does it as good as any college prospect at linebacker you'll see. You mentioned Tremaine Edmonds. He's like an awesome piece, and he immediately becomes, in my opinion, your strong side linebacker in this defense. But, I mean, there's a couple of things you can do with him because, I mean, he's good in coverage, and he can rush the passer, too. So, I mean, there's a pretty much a checkmate type situation if you can get him in there. But also to the Josh Allen thing, I mean, he's not going to the second round. And, I mean, if you want my opinion, I think it's just inconsistency that hurts him right now. He cannot start year one, which is going to be a trick then because, I mean, if you got like an ultra QB needy team that wants their guy to go right away, Josh Allen is not the guy you want to take with that expectation. But the stuff that he does on tape when it's good, it is fan-frickin-tastic. I mean, there's throws he makes on tape that like are just things you do not see out of a quarterback, whether they're playing at Wyoming, USC, or wherever, Texas, any school you want to put out there. But when it's just not consistent. And I mean, he's got that thing on him where it's really hard to get a quarterback and project him as a capable NFL starter when he throws under 60%. I think Matthew Stafford had that thing going too, though. So, or in that ballpark. So, I mean, those kind of things will hurt him. But ultimately, I think that, again, his tape when it's good, like when he played in that Idaho Potato Bowl, it's intoxicating. He makes one throw on there. He throws a post that is the most ungodly thing I've ever seen in my life. So, I mean, somebody is gonna risk that, and I think that if you trust your coaching staff to develop him, and you've got a guy in there to go ahead and create that cushion so you don't have to play him right away, and that becomes a no-brainer for me. I mean, he's not my favorite quarterback in this draft, but I get why a team would go for him.
So he's basically the ultimate boom or bust quarterback.
Oh, hands down. I mean, and people know that. That's why, I mean, there's almost like a culture out there where people laugh about, some people think he's awesome. Some people think he's going to be an absolute bust. I think he wants it too much to bust. I think a lot of your typical busts are guys that, I mean, I've made this claim on Twitter before, but I think it's really hard to project a quarterback to the NFL unless you can sit down with them and really get to know them. Because none of us knew when people were sitting down with Ryan Leaf and they asked him what he'd do with his first game check, and he said he'd go to Vegas and pretty much go on a bender. We didn't know that. But, I mean, there has to be a love for the game. Jamarcus Russell didn't love it. Ryan Leaf is a guy that ultimately had other priorities placed above football. But I think that, I mean, Josh Allen, I think, wants it too much to be your classic bust. I'm not saying he's going to be awesome. He's got the potential to be really good, though. He needs to go to the right team, though.
Chad, I thought I heard. Were you trying to say something earlier?
Yeah, no, I was just responding, going through with the thing on the Josh Allen thing. I guess to step back one step further, back to the question on what I think is going to happen with Buffalo. I can't imagine Buffalo has made the trades they made without having one in place, and I really think Buffalo has a trade in place with Cleveland at number 4. And I think the reports probably are accurate that they're going after Josh Allen, because I think if you're going after Rosen or if you're going after Darnold or even Mayfield, I think to do what Buffalo's doing would be incredibly risky if your plan is to get one of those guys. And I alluded to this on the show last week, I think, with you, Lewis, and that's watch for this, because I really believe this is the case. I don't have any inside information or anything like that. I'm just logically thinking this through, and I don't believe that Cleveland is taking a quarterback number 1 overall. I really think Cleveland's looking at taking Barkley or Chubb number 1 overall. And I think Cleveland wants Lamar Jackson. I think that's their plan. It just doesn't make the greatest sense to go with Tyrod Taylor and then put Sam Darnold behind him or put Josh Rosen behind him, because it's a completely different style of offense you're running. Those are classic drop back quarterbacks that you build your offense around. And Tyrod Taylor is a guy that has to move around to be successful. And so I think for Cleveland, I mean, if you're Cleveland right now, doesn't it make all the sense in the world to get your hands on Lamar Jackson and put him behind Tyrod Taylor for your 2 quarterbacks? Your offense doesn't change. And so what I think is going to happen is Cleveland's going to take either Barkley or Chubb. I think there's almost no chance, unless it's a preposterous trade, that the Giants are not going to take a quarterback. Eli Manning's 37. The Giants absolutely don't intend to be in the top 5 picks every year. This is their chance to grab their franchise quarterback behind Manning. I think they're taking Rosen or Darnold at 2. I think the Jets then are in position to either take Rosen, Darnold, or Mayfield at 3. Those teams know that. And then Buffalo then is going to wait and see who's available at 4. And assuming their guy's there, they're going to execute that trade with Buffalo. And so I think Cleveland's intention is to drop back to 12 and possibly take Lamar Jackson at 12. And then get the picks from Buffalo. And if Cleveland will absolutely be in position to just fleece Buffalo if 3 quarterbacks are gone, because Denver will take one at 5 if like somebody like Mayfield's available or there. So I kind of think that's how it's going to play out. But I do think Allen is Buffalo's guy, and I think Buffalo feels pretty good to get him at 4. I don't think the other teams are going to take him ahead. He's the only one of the 4 I wouldn't want to see Miami take at 11. I know he's talented, and Carson Wentz really spins this because Carson Wentz went to a lower division college, and obviously he did very well. But if you're Miami with Tannehill, bringing Josh Allen in I view him as a developmental quarterback. Right, I think he's got he has a great arm, he has a tremendous skill set. But I, under no fairy tale, think you can throw Josh Allen to start the way Carson Wentz did it. I think he's somebody you're going to have to work with the NFL. It's just such a hard jump to go from a lower division school, jump into the NFL, and expect to have immediate success. And so I don't see him being a great fit for Miami at 11. So I'm kind of hoping he's not there, because I would rather see Miami go like Mason Rudolph or somebody like that in the second or third round as a developmental guy, so we can get that blue chip player at 11. That's my overall feel on the quarterback situation.
All right, let me throw this at you, Chad. You keep saying how they're interested in Lamar Jackson because they're going after Tyrod Taylor, and they just went and got DeShone Kizer, and excuse me. They traded DeShone Kizer. Right, I'm sorry. But they got Tyrod Taylor back. Okay, here is the question that I'm having, and this is what's going on in my mind right now, because I watched that whole debacle, for lack of a better term, in Cleveland with Hugh Jackson and his quarterbacks. It seemed like Jackson was looking for every excuse to not let Kizer be the quarterback. You keep saying how this was an offense built for Kizer, and it's like, how can it be an offense built for Kizer when Jackson kept trying to look for excuses to not use Kizer? And I can understand why you would think, well, they brought in Tyrod Taylor, they must want to keep this running quarterback thing going. I'm like, I don't think that's what Hugh Jackson wants to do, which makes me wonder why they would go in and get Tyrod Taylor to begin with. But considering the way that Jackson tried to run the Browns last year, I'm thinking to myself, Hugh Jackson does not want DeShone Kizer, and I don't think he really wants Tyrod Taylor to be running this thing. I think he wants that drop back quarterback.
Maybe, Lewis, but I mean, I'm just looking at the personnel. You look at the video like Landry put out right now, the dog pound, and you see those guys playing ball with Tyrod Taylor, and I'm just looking at the team that the Browns have assembled, the people they're putting together in there, and does it feel like you're going to put a Josh Rosen or a Sam Darnold behind Tyrod Taylor with Jarvis Landry and Josh Gordon and all those guys, and that sort of an offense?
I think Jarvis Landry is just trying to convince his boy OBJ to demand the trade to Cleveland.
Well, if they go get OBJ, I'm just saying, like, the chemistry they're putting together feels like Tyrod Taylor is going to fit right in with that culture and that type of offense. And so it's the Browns, so anything they do wouldn't surprise me. But if I'm logically trying to put a team together for the Browns, why would I go out and trade for a quarterback that's a mobile quarterback that has to move around? If anything in Buffalo, what you saw is Tyrod Taylor is not a quarterback you just set in the pocket and have him do pre-snap reads and get the ball out where it's supposed to go. He's a guy that has to move around a lot. So why bring in a guy that has to play that style of offense and then draft, number one, a drop-back quarterback to put behind him? I mean, how much is your rookie going to learn having to see an offense installed every week in the game plan that doesn't fit his skill set? And so, knowing the Browns, it wouldn't shock me that they'll bring in a rookie, use their number one pick, and then run an offense that doesn't suit him. That wouldn't shock me with the Browns. But I just feel like that's not what they're wanting. I just feel like they want to install that offense around Tyrod Taylor. And the only quarterback, realistically, other than maybe Mayfield, would be Lamar Jackson that fits what they're doing there. Anyway, that's just it's a common sense thing to me that makes me wonder about that. One thing I do feel pretty confident about is Buffalo is not trading up to number one overall to get a quarterback, because that trade already happened. Buffalo has all kinds of picks right now that they could send over to Cleveland, and they could just do that trade right now if that's what they wanted to. And so it looks pretty clear to me that Buffalo is not going to trade up with Cleveland to number one overall for a quarterback. That move has to be the floor, because I thought it was the Colts. I thought that's where Buffalo was going to go, and maybe that was what they were thinking about. But the Jets really threw a monkey wrench in there on Buffalo then when they jumped up to 3. I think it would take a fortune to get the number 2 pick from the Giants, and I don't think the Browns want to part with the number 1 overall pick. And so it is that number 4 pick, which is a very interesting pick because Denver is at 5, and Denver also wants a franchise quarterback. And so I think Buffalo is going to give up. I'm predicting Buffalo is going to give up more for number 4 than the Jets gave up for number 3 once this draft gets going, because they're going to want to get up so badly to get their quarterback.
So nobody's buying the Denver Broncos Case Keenum hype?
John Elway? No. We're talking about John Elway here. He wants a stud quarterback, however he can get him. So Anyway. With all that said, rolling back to Miami, I don't think I'm with Ron on the fact that I don't think Miami's taking a first-round quarterback. They have way too many needs right now, and a developmental quarterback is a quarterback that's capable of being a starter developmental. I'm not talking about a 6th or 7th round pick quarterback, but I do think it makes more sense with this draft to get one of those guys like Falk, maybe in the 2nd or 3rd round.
Some of the day 2 guys are actually really good. I mean, the problem with them for some teams is that, I mean, they're developmental guys. Miami's got the kind of situation where they can handle that. So I'm not as hot to trot on Mason Rudolph as some. I'm more of a Mike White guy, but Luke Falk does some really good things too. So I understand the interest in that. So, I mean, if you're Miami and, I mean, you like your situation, I mean, you more or less have committed to Tannehill for 2 years with that extension. I mean, a developmental guy is, I mean, par for the course. If that's the route you want to go, you trust in your head coach to be able to develop him, which I would like to think Adam Gase can do and knows he can do. So I think that's far more likely. So I agree with these guys.
All right, fair enough. Well, okay, so let's go ahead and switch the topics a little bit here. Oh, Stav Dog in the chat says Dolphins are making a big trade in the next 48 hours. Okay. I don't know where that's coming from. I don't know if he has like a source or something. So many weird people have sources these days, and some of them are fake, some of them are real, and so I don't really know who to trust anymore. But in any case, it was reported by Armando Salguero that the Dolphins are going to be looking at a potential trade again, and Andre Branch is among the names being shopped around. First of all, I don't see any team jumping up for joy to go get Andre Branch, so I don't know what the Dolphins could get for that. But I mean, what's left to trade at this point other than draft picks? Like, I know Mike Tannenbaum doesn't really put a lot of value into draft picks, but at some point, you're just going to have to look at this team and like, okay, we don't have a lot of money left. We've used up pretty much all of it, at least until Sue's money comes in. And other than that, there's really not much left you can do. There's not a whole lot of flexibility left. If you go after a certain player, he better be like on like one of his rookie deals, because there's not enough money left to go and do anything else. Like, even if you were able to move Branch, there's still going to be a decent amount of dead cap there because of the contract that he signed. You would have to wait until after June 1st in order to make sure that you save that extra cash. So I don't know what the Dolphins are planning. It sounds good because a lot of the trades the Dolphins have made, I'm pretty much okay with. But I'm looking at this team right now and the cap space that's available. Last I checked, I think the cap space was like weighing in and around like $5 million left. It's like, what's left for the Dolphins to trade for?
Well, there's plenty left for them to trade for. The problem is, what ammunition do they have to trade? I mean, you're really looking at the roster. You got, I mean, maybe Branch, but his deal's ugly. So you need to trade him to somebody with a lot of cap room that can absorb that. And they think that he's that kind of complementary missing piece for the defense. I don't even know if I can name that team. I mean, the only other person I see that you figure maybe somebody wants to go out and get might be Devontae Parker, but that doesn't really clear much.
Just said that in the chat, Ron.
Yeah, that doesn't really clear. Yeah, but that doesn't really clear a lot of space. So that's the problem. So if you're looking to clear some space, that really isn't it. If you're looking to maybe grab a pick or do a player trade, that could be a different story. There's not really much else out there that makes sense for us to trade. Maybe Kiko Alonso, possibly, but I mean that leaves us thin before the draft, not knowing exactly how that draft's going to work out. So I kind of doubt that one. No one on the offensive line, really. I wouldn't touch anything in our defensive backfield right now. You've got, McDonald that you just signed. You've got Jones that you just signed down for a longer term. And then you've got some really great young cornerback talent that you likely don't want to trade. I mean, I'm not really sure.
Please don't.
Yeah, please don't. Exactly. I'm not really sure what's left to do there, honestly. But hey, we get surprised every year, so maybe this will be another one. But I'm just not sure I see the player besides Branch or Parker. I don't know who else is left.
I think the rumor, and it's just a rumor. I heard this when I was driving home because they were talking about NFL radio, but they were looking into the fact that maybe Miami's been in discussions looking at like a guy like Michael Brockers. I heard that one. I don't know if there's any validity to that.
Hold on. Doesn't Michael Brockers have an $11 million cap hit? We can't afford that.
I think actually the way they explained it, it's not. I think it's like a $5 million cap hit. I'm not sure how they were able to. I haven't looked at the numbers at all, but this is just, I mean, all I'm doing is passing along what I heard, which makes me know better than the rest of Finn's Twitter. But they're explaining it down where, no, it's a modest hit. It's not as much. And I had the same reaction. I was like, really? I expected more. So I'm not sure in that regard. But I mean, that's something where if you're looking to clean up that position going into the draft, so it's not something of need in any way, shape, or form, then I get that. But I'm not a big fan of the Dolphins really tinkering too much more. I think that this draft is now slanted in a way where it really can help them build up positions that they really need. Tight end is the one I'm most excited about, which sounds extremely pathetic. But and linebacker's another one. I mean, defensive tackle you can do better, but backup quarterback, unless you want to go with Brocco. So, I mean, there's several positions coming up in this draft, and running back too, where the board really favors a team like Miami who can let these guys trade up for quarterbacks and throw away a lot of draft capital and whatnot. They can just sit back and just enjoy the fruits of whatever falls to them at 11 if they choose to stay there. So, I mean, I don't really want to see too much tinkering. I like the skeleton of the defense right now. I think that it's almost like people forgot the Robert Quinn trade at this point. I think that that's going to end up being a big deal just in that, I mean, it really frees them up in the meantime at pass rusher. I don't know if he's got a long-term future in Miami. I don't, but I think that will really give them, I keep saying this, but give them a lot of cushion in terms of pass rusher, because I feel like now you got Charles Harris in there. I mean, you've got guys to work with. So this is sad to say, but this is the best I've felt about the defense in a while. But they need to make some serious additions to it. I mean, if you're really going to commit to that this year and have something good going.
Okay, before Chad, I hear that. Before you chime in, Chad, I wanted to make it clear. I just looked up Michael Brocker's contract on Over the Cap. It looks like he has like an $11 million cap hit, and trading it would save $9.5 million for the Rams. Okay, but wouldn't that mean that the Dolphins would take on that hit? I still don't think it can happen.
Well, to answer that with Lewis, I think this is kind of a long game plan that the Dolphins are doing. I do think they, which was reported today, that they're shopping Branch. I think they are shopping Branch around. If I understand right, sometimes these contracts are complicated, but Andre Branch, if he were traded to a team, would cost him about $8 million, because he has his contract this year is guaranteed. So if he's traded, unless he were to renegotiate it, which I think would be highly unlikely, the team he goes to would have to pay him $8 million this year. The other parts of his cap hit are already on the books for the Dolphins as dead money, because they gave him a bonus, which then they'll have to absorb that. I don't think that's out of the realm of realistic for a team that needs a defensive end. I don't know that Andre Branch is going to be very appealing, though, to a team until after the draft, because they're going to want to fill that role with a cheaper player out of the draft, cheaper younger player in the draft if they can. But once you pass the draft, it wouldn't shock me to see a team give Miami a low round pick, maybe like a 7th round pick or something, and take on Branch's contract to give them the depth at defensive end that they would want. And what that would do then is give Miami that money post June. And I think that would probably be what Miami would want anyway. And so you're going to see Miami suddenly have cap space again post June. And so it's not out of the question that they could be shopping players and talking trade to right now, but these trades wouldn't actually execute until after June, when they get the Sue money freed up in the cap space. And so if you look at it that way, they absolutely would have the cap space to take on a player like that, if that were the case.
And how much money are they going to need to sign their draft class?
Oh, that's a fixed number, so I don't.
It's like $4 million, something like that. 3.5, $4 million, or am I off on that, Chad?
I don't know. It's somewhere in that range. It might be somewhere between 5 to 6 or 7 million at the most. So it's not a real
lot
high
less
number
than it used to be.
And it depends where your picks are, I suppose. Like your number one pick, you know. But it's a fixed number that they'll know exactly what they need after the draft. So I don't see that being an issue. I just don't know what Miami intends to carry over in the next year or what they plan to do yet. But they're going to have probably in that range of $20 to $25 million in cap space after June, because what do they have right now? Like 5 or 6, I want to say. If
Something
they did get
like that.
If they did get Branch traded, then they would be going up into the $30 million range to either roll over or have available after June.
Okay, I'm looking up the Miami Dolphins salary cap right now. I'm checking out Spot Track because I want to make sure that I don't miss anything. From what I can see, Sam Young's contract is not yet on the books, and for that matter, neither is Osweiler. I don't see Frank Gore on here yet. So there's still some players here that haven't been officially paid. So right now it says something along the lines of we have $10 million in cap space. But remember, these guys haven't been paid yet. I don't even see William Hayes on here yet, even though that his contract is official. So that number at $10 million is going to go down. So, and according to Over the Cap, if we traded Branch now, we'd save $6 million and wind up with dead money of $4 million. So, I mean, it's not terrible, but still, at this point, I'd much rather just stand pat with what we've got, unless we're going to go and look for draft picks. Devontae Parker, I can understand why people would want to see if we can get something for him. Like, listen, I get it. He's been disappointing. He's been, for all intents and purposes, he has been very Yatil Green-ish in the sense that he keeps getting hurt. Hey, he keeps getting hurt. He had all these high expectations, didn't meet any of them. And at this point, like, his contract's going to be running out pretty soon. So if you're going to get something for him, you might as well try to get something now. But the thing is that Parker, a lot of people are making jokes about, like, the midget brigade, or we have a bunch of Smurfs at wide receiver. And Parker is pretty much the only tall guy left. So I can understand the hesitation to remove him. And honestly, I don't want to move on from Parker because, from what I can tell, like, look, we brought in a bunch of leader guys, right? We're looking for people who can help the offense function properly, who can make them prepare better. That's why we went and got Frank Gore. We didn't get Frank Gore because he was necessarily a good running back, though I think he still is. And we didn't necessarily go get Danny Amendola because he's this terrific ball player. We got both of those guys because they are leader types. They are guys who do everything the right way. They prepare properly. They make sure they're in shape. They make sure that the playbook is practically memorized until it's second nature. These are guys that this Dolphins team needs. Like, for all Jarvis Landry, I will say he was an emotional leader by far, but he was not somebody that you were going to look at and say, you know what, that guy knows how to run the playbook, and he knows everything about the team, and he knows where he needs to be when he needs to be there, and he wasn't that guy. And all due respect to Kenny Stills, I don't think he is either. I'm not saying, I don't even want to accuse these guys of being lazy, but I don't think that I can say definitively that these guys spent night and day just working on being incredible ball players. I think a lot of them tried to scoot by on their talent and their natural qualities, and that's not enough in today's NFL. And I think that's why this whole culture change thing is happening, is because you need to be aware that if you are not putting 100% into being the best you can be on the field, then you're really not going to be able to function on this team. That's what made the Patriots so special for such a long time, was that these guys, it's not that these guys are particularly talented. Danny Amendola is not the best wide receiver out there, and neither is Julian Edelman. Neither is half of those guys, and yet somehow there's never any stopping them. And we could say that it's just Tom Brady being incredible Tom Brady, but then how do you account for Matt Castle doing pretty much the same thing? So it's that these guys prepare like no other team in football, and that's what Adam Gase is trying to go for. Parker has had motivation issues in the past. Besides injury issues, he has had issues with his own self-discipline. Not in the sense that he's a troublemaker. He's not somebody who's going to go get arrested for doing something he's not supposed to. But, like, the SpongeBob thing and the Fruit Loops and all this and that stuff. Like, even if he's making a joke out of it, if he really does these things, like, you're an athlete. You shouldn't be putting that artificial junk into your body. So maybe that's what they're going for, is that we're trying to trigger Parker into doing, like, okay, I need to get my act together now, otherwise I'm not going to be able to do anything else. So I can see why people would say that Parker is trade bait, but the idea of losing Parker just it rubs me the wrong way, because while I do think that the offense is going to be built like a Tom Brady-ish offense, I still don't want to lose that potential weapon that would be Devontae Parker at 6'3". There's nobody else who can do that.
I agree with you on that. Go ahead. Go ahead, Keith.
Oh, no. I'll go second. I sound like your point was probably going to be more important than mine.
I don't know about that, but my point with Parker is he's still cheap. So, for the Miami's not going to just give him away. You want my best guess? So you've got a player with a high ceiling still. He's still very young. As far as I know, he's healthy at the moment. He struggles staying healthy, but he doesn't have any major limitations health-wise at the moment. You could probably get maybe, say, a team like the Rams, assuming they don't go get Odell Beckham Jr. This isn't a great draft for wide receiver talent. And so a team like the Rams, who appear to be all in right now to try to get the LA market, they may be willing to give up like a third or fourth round pick around the draft or even after the draft for Devontae Parker for the Dolphins. So that's probably your best return on him. Unless Devontae Parker has a sudden turnaround, this is probably going to be his last year in Miami, because I don't think they're going to give him a big contract after his rookie deal is up. And so it would make sense to trade him in that regard, but that would really mean that you feel good about some of these guys that we talked about earlier before they did the trade for Wilson and Amendola, and that is, can Ford step up and be a guy that's out on the boundary in this offense, or can a Drew Morgan step up and do that job? And if that's the case, that may be, even though that's hard to swallow, that he was a high number 1 draft pick. If you can get your third or fourth right now for Parker, or even use him in the draft to flop up, maybe Miami can trade Devontae Parker and their 4th round pick to get into the 2nd round to get the backup quarterback you want, or to get the defensive tackle you want. That's probably the best way to use him from a value standpoint versus just the last year of his rookie deal.
I think that if you're worried about adding size to the pass catching group, you achieve that through getting a detached tight end in this draft anyway. You've seen offenses like Kansas City go a similar route where, all their guys are 6 foot or under, and then they really place a premium target on Travis Kelce. So I would assume something along the same line with Miami. I think that getting a tight end is really going to be key to them fixing a lot of their red zone woes. You saw how they were able to use Deion Sims in Gase's first year in 2016. And he was an absolute weapon inside the 20-yard line. And then everything just fell apart at that position last year. And I thought, outside the fact that I think the guy throwing him the ball was also a big part of the problem, I thought that the tight end position or lack thereof really hurt these guys in the red zone. So I think that this offense in a lot of ways will resemble a lot of the key players Adam Gase had out in Denver, I think. But I'm good with, I can take or leave Devontae Parker at this point. I don't want to quit on him. And this is going to be, I think that this probably will be his last year unless something incredible happens. He goes out there and he just really puts it together. Maybe getting him away from Jarvis Landry does something. I don't know. I don't know the dynamic in that locker room. But they're clearly looking, when you're talking about a culture change, one of the little things you're trying to do is motivate guys who are struggling to do so. And Devontae Parker is unquestionably one of them. Incredible talent, a guy who can really rack up yards after the catch when he's healthy. Health has been a problem. I don't agree that he's Yatil Green bad, though, because his legs are still screwed on. So it hasn't been that bad. But I think that you're going to see, as you see this offense start to, you're seeing taking on more of the identity of its coach in terms of what he wants. He wants precision from his routes. He wants guys who are quick in a short area, long speed. Albert Wilson's definitely got it. Amendola can run, but not great. Kenny Stills is a burner. But you're looking for guys who win in that short area, who can run precision routes, who can clear out areas. But you need to add the tight end to that to really package this thing together, along with a quarterback who can really get the most out of that kind of offense. Which we've seen Ryan Tannehill in his current form is the guy who can do that. So I like the way the offense is going. Devontae Parker, I can take or leave. We'll see what happens there, but I don't like his chances.
Ron, you've been quiet for a little while.
Yeah, I actually would like to ask Keith a question. We were talking about this last week, Keith, and I was bringing up the importance of the tight end position. I'm actually real concerned about that position because if any skill position on offense, I don't feel comfortable about bringing in a rookie, even a higher round rookie. It's tight end. That position just takes so much time to learn, to go from college to the NFL. They just play it so differently. A lot of times you're taking like a bigger, bulkier wide receiver and trying to make them a detached tight end, or it's just, I mean, sometimes you have these tight ends in college and they're just really not quite the size you need. They can't block. They can't pass protect. There's just so much for them to learn, and there's really not a lot of these guys out there to begin with. They don't grow on trees, and even if you get a good one, they're not going to be great the first year. And right now we've got Gray and Duarte, and I just feel very, very uncomfortable about that position. And I could see us coming out of the end of this draft with as many questions as we had answers to begin with. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? You seem pretty confident we can just go in this draft, grab a tight end, and the position is fixed. Maybe it is for 2019 or 2020, but I don't know about this year.
I wouldn't say fixed. I would say that you're finding your guy in that offense. I mean, he's not going to be the only one. You mentioned Gray. I really like him as a tweener type. I think he's really underrated in terms of what he can do in this offense.
Charles
I don't
Clay-ish?
know if we're... Pardon?
Charles Clay-ish?
Yeah, just ultimately, Adam Gase's offense is built around the fact that you're creating matchup problems. I mean, you're creating them, and ultimately it's through speed. I mean, you're seeing right now that height and overall physical size is not the overriding trait that this team is looking for in terms of its guys out on the perimeter or in the slot. So, I mean, he adds something, but this tight end class is really good. I mean, especially like if you're talking about detached guys who can do things in the red zone, there are a couple of guys in there, like Mark Andrews out of Oklahoma is a guy who should be able to come in and give you something. Now, I wouldn't say that the position is fixed overnight. It's not a box that you check as soon as you draft this guy. But if you're looking for, I hate to use this comparison, but in terms of like a focal point, if you're looking for a Travis Kelce type guy, a Mark Andrews is going to get you in that, I think will get you that focal point that you want at that position in this offense. There are question marks. I mean, I really like Hurst out of South Carolina too. I think those are the top two guys in terms of you bring them in, and I love their chances to succeed. I like Goddard a lot out of South Dakota State. He looks like an oversized wide receiver, but I liked his blocking. The guy who's blocking is the biggest problem, and this is no secret, is Gesicki.
Yeah, I looked at him. I looked at his film. Oh my God, I did a film review on him, and even I'm definitely no expert when it comes to film watching, but even I could tell, like, oh my God, this guy can't block for crap. Like, he makes Michael Eggman look like some kind of superstar center.
The inline ability, it's just not there. Goddard can block. Mark Andrews, I really like as a blocker. Hurst is definitely like your typical like SEC detached guy, but I mean, he's got really good size too. So there are some guys, and I mean, that's not even, Ian Thomas out of Indiana is a guy who's really getting some buzz right now. So I wouldn't say fixed. It's not going to get fixed overnight, but I mean, if you're looking for a long-term solution to the problem, and you're looking for a guy that, okay, now we're revamping this offense, let's find our tight end who fits into this plan. I think this draft is a really good time to do it. I think, if you're looking second, third round, I wouldn't even touch on in the first round. I don't think there's a point to that. The only guy I've seen mentioned in the first round right now is Andrews, and he is a stud. He was outstanding. And honestly, of all the talented pass catchers at Oklahoma, without a doubt, the best guy is Mark Andrews, I thought. And they had some talented guys on that team. So I think that it's worth applying one of your draft picks within, I would say day two to get one of those guys.
I have no doubt that they should do that. I've been really vocally mad at them the way they've kicked the can down the road and not invested in a tight end for several years now, and they just
the draft specifically.
Yeah, in the draft.
In the free agency class of tight ends have been rotten for us.
Let me just sign, Jordan Cameron. Let me just sign Julius Thomas. That guy's a slug. It's been horrible, and they've just refused to spend a second, third, fourth round. What's the last time we drafted a tight end that high? With Clay, right? And
and he was a 6th round pick.
And Clay technically wasn't even brought in as a tight end at first, wasn't he? He was looked at as like a fullback.
Yeah, fullback, exactly.
Yeah, he was an H back. Yeah, so
and it was.
Ron just disappeared on us.
Way to go, Keith.
I
defended him.
I didn't do that.
He was in the middle of a sentence.
I had nothing to do with that, but I mean, he's right in that.
Actually, the Dolphins tight end situation offended him. That's what happened.
He's shook.
Yeah. Well, I think that as somebody who, because I mean, I became a fan of this team from like in the late '80s, but I really started to get into watching them in like the early '90s, and I mean, you're talking about a time when I remember the Dan Marino to Keith Jackson connection was just awesome. So, I mean, like, I was spoiled early on watching, like, pretty killer tight end play in Miami. And, like, Randy McMichael was awesome. You know, I'll never understand why we moved on from that guy when we did, because I thought that was a horrible move. You know, we've had, I mean, this organization has had some great tight ends in there. And, I mean, we've been missing that in recent years. So I agree with Ron when he says, like, when we've been kicking the can down the road. Yeah, you need to go ahead and commit a quality draft pick to that position. And it's a good year to do it. The funny thing is last year was looked at as like a knockout class. I think that you had some guys who looked, I mean, honestly, I thought you can make the case the best guy or the best producer last year was Evan Ingram, who was kind of like a guy who was a late addition to that pack of OJ Howard and David Njoku, you know, and some really talented guys in there. And then it turned out Ingram was just lights out for the Giants. I mean, he was all they had at one point, which probably lifted up his stock a little bit. But if you're looking for the kind of guy who's going to fit in this Adam Gase offense, I really think that you're looking at a Hurst, or I think Mark Andrews is the prime guy. I like Goddard more than some people. I think people waver on him, but you have some matchup types too. Like when I bring up like the IU kid, I mean, he's a matchup problem. I'm just like Gray. I mean, I'm not prototypical size, a kind of guy who would have come into the league 20 years ago and then be like, what the hell are we going to do with you? You don't have the size to play tight end. But the position has evolved to the point where you can detach them, and all of a sudden you're talking about an oversized seam threat. And if they have speed, which, I mean, you're hoping they do, then you're creating another matchup problem. I mean, we've had that. How many years have we had that done to us? I feel like it happens every year.
So what if Gesicki?
Oh, Ron, hi. Maybe that's why I confess I put you in timeout. No. But okay, yeah. So
what if Gesicki falls to like 4th because of that size, because of the blocking issue? Because I mean, he is the fastest tight end probably of this class. Well, what if he?
I don't think he plays to that.
No,
that was my issue.
He doesn't. I don't think he plays as fast as he should. Honestly, he just has, like, I will say this: when he gets the ball in his hands, he has good. He has good hands. When he gets the ball in his hands, he's willing to do pretty much anything it takes to get that extra yard. Like there were a couple of plays where he just hurdled guys straight up. Like that's his basketball and volleyball background in action. But like again, if I'm gonna bring in a tight end, I kind of want somebody who can do at least a little bit of both, at least a little bit. I don't want to turn him into something he's not, but I don't want him to be straight up useless at the other thing. I don't want to look at this guy and be like, okay, we have an emergency. We need you to block. And I don't want to have that situation be like, prepare to lose a lot of yards because he can't block for anything.
I wouldn't shun him just based on that. And I learned my lesson last year because I was really down on Tankersley. Just because Tankersley at Clemson just did not tackle, had no interest in it whatsoever. Then he gets to the Dolphins and he just looks physical as all get out at the position. So like, I'm not going to completely write him off. I realize that I just jumped the other side of the ball to make that comparison, but Gesicki does a lot of things I like. And I mean, explosive leaper, which, I mean, if you're talking about a tight end who's, 6'5", I mean, that is a weapon in the red zone. If you could jump, I mean, we can make things happen there. So I'm not going to go ahead and kill him on that. I mean, if we drafted Gesicki in the 3rd round, cool. I'm just going to hope that the coaching staff can get him looking to do more when he's in an inline situation. Like, here's what we want to do. Like, if you're going to chip the defensive end, or if we need to go ahead and we need you to go ahead and dig out that linebacker, that strong side linebacker, something like that. But the straight line speed, I don't really see on his tape, but the vertical explosion I do. And I mean, like, and he is like, he's got quality hands, catches the ball well. I mean, great size. So I mean, he'll get dinged because of the blocking. It bothers me too. I can't stand it when guys really just kind of fluff off on that detail. But I mean, he's a good player too, and I don't want to. I mean, if he had been in last year's class, I mean, he would have been viewed as a premier guy too, I think.
In the chat, Stav Dog says that Troy Drayton can still play. Look, man, Troy Drayton's my boy. I love him, but no. No.
Troy's running an offensive tackle size right now. He'd have to cut weight.
Yeah. I love you, Troy, if you're listening, but
I had a couple comments on it, Lewis. One is just watching what the Dolphins have done right now with their offseason. And one thing you have not seen is tight ends coming in, free agent tight ends that Miami's looking at, even lowballing them on contracts that we know about anyway. They're out there. I mean, the mistakes they've made the last few years, you could have went after Eric Ebron or Tyler Eifert. The has-been tight ends are out there. But Miami hasn't even been bringing them in. And so that tells me
Ebron is still unsigned. I don't think anybody even wants to look at him.
I'm just saying Miami could easily you could easily bring him in for a visit, check him out, and if he checked out, offer him a low ball offer, but they're not doing that. And you'll notice that they were doing that with running back. Before Frank Gore was signed, DeMarco Murray was in here. So they clearly were wanting to get a veteran running back. They clearly wanted a veteran quarterback, even though the names have been vomit worthy, with like Chad Henne. I mean, that's the best thing I can say about Brock Osweiler is they didn't sign
we haven't even talked about Osweiler yet.
But with that said, they were bringing those positions in, and you have not seen them bring in linebackers in. You haven't seen them bring in defensive tackles in, and you haven't seen them bringing tight ends in. And to me, that's a pretty good cue that they have players targeted for those positions in the draft, and more than likely, they're not looking at a tight end. I'm guessing that they feel comfortable enough with more than one. There's probably 3 or 4 tight ends maybe in this draft that they're comfortable with bringing in. That's why they're just waiting, because they're pretty confident they're going to get one of those guys in the draft. And that's probably true at the linebacking position as well as at the defensive tackle position. And when you look at the players available, that's not shocking. It looks like you can probably get some starting capable linebackers and some starting capable tight ends in the second, third round of this draft. One other thing I've been reading, whether it's rumor or not, is that they're working really hard on getting Anthony Fasano to resign. And that makes, to me, all the sense in the world to bring Fasano back, who is one of the best blocking tight ends, in the NFL. And he's a very, prepares, all-pro, busts his ass type of tight end. Perfect guy to pair with a rookie. And so I that's what I think their plan is right now, is to hopefully get Anthony Fasano to go one more year and pair him in with one of the rookies. So I don't think they're just going to sign a rookie and do nothing but roll with a rookie. And Marquise Gray is not an exceptional blocker either. And so they're going to, one way or other, have to get a blocking tight end in there with whoever they draft. But to me, it's very obvious they're going to draft a tight end. If they weren't, they would have, when they'd be going after a higher name or making a trade right now for a starting capable tight end, and they haven't even appeared to even have interest in doing that.
Okay, if
for
you
the record,
drafted Gesicki, then I mean, I would bring Gesicki in and just hope, or I would just ask that he graft himself onto Anthony Fasano immediately. Then, because I mean, then that becomes a thing where it's like, okay,
I think it was reported they're trying to convince Fasano to come back one more time.
Yeah, I mean, that would be, if I'm bringing in a guy like Mike Gesicki and I want to go ahead and try to encourage, this is what we're looking for in terms of when you're in an inline situation, there's not a better guy you could get him next to than Anthony Fasano. And you just hope that some of that rubs off. I'm not saying it would, but that would be my hope. If they're bringing Gesicki, I'm like, please just room him with Fasano immediately.
Oh, and for the record, Don Lashley in the chat just informed me Ebron signed with the Colts, so that's that. Okay. Let's see. We've talked about tight ends a lot. I didn't think we were going to talk a lot about tight ends, but that's fine. Let's go ahead and switch the topic.
Position.
Yeah, it is. And okay, the one thing we haven't mentioned is AJ Derby, and a lot of people, like I had mentioned the other day, just yesterday, in fact, that I don't think tight end is as big as a need as we think it is, because I think Marquise Cray can do a lot, and people were all in my mention saying AJ Derby is the guy, AJ Derby is the better one, AJ Derby. And I think what we're really looking at is that AJ Derby is just the one who did something recently. Because Marquise Gray did a lot in 2016 that we really liked, and then in 17 he just kind of fell off the map, and then we saw Derby make like one or two plays, and suddenly AJ Derby is the next superstar tight end that the Dolphins are going to develop. So I don't know what anybody thinks of Derby, but maybe you can shed some light on why everybody's high on him all of a sudden.
I'm not. I'm not one of the people that's high on.
Okay, well, that's pretty straight up.
Good depth player. That's what I would call him. I mean, he knows Adam Gase's system, got some playing time in, good depth. But if their intention for this season is to start AJ Derby as their tight end, I'd be just as concerned if their actual plan is to have Brock Osweiler be their backup quarterback. I don't think either one of those is the plan. I think those are just players that give you a little bit of depth and people that compete in training camp.
Are they confusing him with like AJ Eads? Remember, like that whole movement where they thought that guy was going to be
the linebacker
for us.
The linebacker.
Yeah, that's why. Like, it just seems like if his name is AJ or something, for some reason we're going to treat him like we've got some diamond in the rough here.
AJ Feeling.
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh, this is going to work.
Like we need a token AJ on the team.
Always an AJ, because
there's always an AJ. Like I remember AJ Burnett with the Marlins.
AJ Burnett. And there's potential with Derby, but I don't treat it as a situation where like he's going to go out there next year and all of a sudden we're like, oh man, we had Greg Olsen on the roster and we didn't even realize it. I don't think that's going to be the case. But I think I totally agree with what Chad said, that it's a thing where their lack of interest in finding a guy in free agency right now denotes, in my opinion, the fact that they've already got a group targeted in the draft. And I do think it is a group, because I think that there are multiple guys they can make work in terms of the offense they're looking to run. And I'm excited. I wanted to draft a tight end. Well, I wanted one last year, but I understood when they took Charles Harris, just because, defensive end trumps tight end every time, let's be honest. So I got that, but I would really like to find a premier guy at that position in Miami, not an also ran, not somebody else, not a leftover from another team. Like, I want our guy.
I got you. So, let's see. Oh, I saw something on Twitter just now. Let's slightly drifting back to the trade topic. Apparently, the Seahawks are opening up trade offers for Earl Thomas. Uh-oh.
Don't tell Duke that. He'll go nuts.
I'll give him. I was gonna say I'll give him Jared Odrick and Koa Misi for him, because that's who we should have had anyway. Sorry, I'm not bitter.
How about Devontae Parker and Andre Branch? I'll do it. He obviously is a stud, but I just can't imagine the Dolphins can handle his contract right now. They've got so much money in Rashad Jones already, and they've got a pretty good chunk of money in T.J. McDonald. It's not crazy money, but they're paying T.J. McDonald as a starting safety, and so
why don't we turn him into a linebacker? That's the talk that a lot of people are doing. Like let's be like, if we're going to be real about this, it feels like, Chad, I remember back in the day when you and I would have discussions on earlier shows, and I remember you were really high on Denzel Perryman because we really needed a bruiser in the middle. It's like, man, the NFL has changed since then, because nowadays it really seems like a bruiser isn't necessary. Now it's just about running around and chasing guys.
Not so much a bruiser as a guy that can actually tackle. We had some years there where our linebackers were just terrible tacklers, and that just killed us. But Kiko Alonso is a good tackler, and I'm hoping, on film last year, Raheem McMillan looked like a very good fundamental tackler as well. I think he'll be a good middle linebacker if he's back to full health. So,
but that's the problem. But that's the problem, is that if you have Raekwon in the middle again, that means Kiko's going to be on the side, and we know that doesn't work.
No, I don't think you'll put I wouldn't put Raekwon as the middle linebacker. I think they'll move. He's capable of playing will or middle, as is Kiko Alonso. And I think McMillan's capable of doing stronger middle. But in Miami's defense, they tend to try to not make it that categorized. They try to move they like their linebackers interchangeable. I'll put it that way.
But Kiko's not interchangeable. We know that now.
Oh, he is to an extent. He's actually pretty good at playing middle line, better than he was at playing
the middle. Yes, that's where I
was going to say. I mean, he's played better at middle than Will, in my opinion. Since we've acquired him.
A lot better. He was miserable last year. It was not pretty.
It is, but you know, if you watch the tape on Raekwon, he can play. He can play all over. I mean, he's talented. Yeah. He's fast. His instincts are off the charts. But I'm really hoping they get him. I won't be disappointed at all if it's Edmonds, because Edmonds can easily play any of the three spots. He's big enough to play strong, and he's fast enough and has the coverage skills to play weak even. And so you can move him everywhere. So either player would be great. But when I was watching the tape on Smith, I keep saying why Zach Thomas was so good is he was so good at understanding what was going on, where to go, where the football was going, and what proper lanes to take to get to the ball. And that's the kind of player Smith is he's a monster at instinctually. And so either one of those players would be fine. And I have no problem if my issue is McMillan, Alonso, and Smith, and I'm trying to figure out who to put where, because they're all very athletic and they all can run. So that'd be a good problem. I'm not too worried about who plays what position in that group.
I cannot.
Roquan Smith reminds me a lot of Derek Brooks in terms of just overall speed, just the way he reads the game. Not necessarily. I mean, people saying like, well, he's an off-ball linebacker, and it's like, but that guy is just such a weapon at his position. So, I don't really understand why people are hesitant about Roquan Smith. I think that if you're at 11 and he's there, then I mean, chances are that Edmonds is not. I don't think both those guys will be on the board for us. I think one will. But Roquan Smith is an awesome prospect who makes the second level of our defense like better overnight. As soon as like he puts that draft hat on, your linebacker core is better for it. But I mean, there are other good linebackers in this draft too. I mean, if you want to mind that, but I think that if you have Edmonds or Smith staring at you in the face at 11, you like your defensive tackle position enough where you feel like you can keep your interior guy clean, your interior linebacker clean. I don't know why you would even hesitate. I think those guys are awesome prospects, and we'd be fortunate to get either one.
Yeah, I'm not debating whether the Dolphins should go linebacker or not. My issue is that because this is my issue with what Chad is saying, is that he's saying that Kiko can go in at weak side or in the middle. I feel like that experiment played out its course last year. We saw that Kiko gets exposed in coverage over and over and over and over again. I don't see why we would even think about trying to put him back there again.
But to clarify that, Lewis, what is apparent is Kiko Alonso struggles covering tight ends in man-to-man coverage. But you can play him, you can move him around positionally. You realize whatever defense you're running, you're going to want to avoid matching Kiko Alonso up man-to-man with tight ends. And to be fair, that's true of most linebackers in the NFL. It's, what linebackers are you going to match up with Rob Gronkowski, when he's running down the field and some of these
nobody, he's always hurt.
Well, yeah, but my point being is, that Kiko got caught in some one-on-ones and man-to-man, and Miami just did, who else were you going to try to cover with? Because, what was the undrafted linebacker they had playing middle linebacker? I'm trying to remember his name.
Chase Allen.
It's Chase Allen. Are you going to try to match Chase Allen up man-to-man out there? Are you going to, so my names are slipping my mind today. My mind.
Mike Hull.
Obviously you're going to match Mike Hull up, or the guy that was from the Bengals that got cut, Ray Mauga, or however you pronounce his name.
Oh my God,
are you going to try to match him up man-to-man? The Dolphins just did not have personnel at linebacker last year where they could match somebody up man-to-man, and Kiko got that by default because he's probably the fastest linebacker on the team last year. You bring in Roquan Smith and you get McMillan back, suddenly the offense isn't quite sure who you're going to match up man-to-man. You can move around, before the ball snapped, and you can suddenly have Kiko jump in the middle and Roquan jump. They can swap spots depending on the formation, and you can have Smith take the tight end on man-to-man based on the offense. You get all that flexibility. So again, Kiko Alonso can tackle and he can run. He's not the best man-to-man coverage guy, and that's, where we were talking about, you can play around with some 3 safety defense. I don't have any issue with that either. I don't think TJ McDonald can become a strong side linebacker. That's not what he is. But in certain formations, you can have, if you got somebody like a Fitzpatrick, let's say in the draft, who you can have as a cover guy, you can put him back with Rashad Jones and bring TJ McDonald up in certain defensive formations, especially in teams that do want to feature a pass catching tight end a lot. You can try to match a safety up on instead of a linebacker and things like that. But I think it's overblown a little bit, Lewis, on Kiko Alonso. I think, again, what's been shown is he's not a great man-to-man coverage guy, but all your linebackers don't have to be great man-to-man coverage linebackers. So if he's mixed with Smith and McMillan, I'd feel just fine with that. Our 3 linebackers. It's still substantially far better from a speed and athletic standpoint than we've had probably in a decade, if that is what we ended up with.
I like McDonald in like a Dayon Buchanan role, but I mean, like, he's not going to be like a Mark Barron where all of a sudden you turn around and he's playing linebacker all the time, like Barron is in LA. So, I mean, I don't know. I like that idea of having like a movable chess piece there. I mean, like McDonald could do that. If you bring Tremaine Edmonds in, all of a sudden you've got that. You can do a lot of things with him, even though I think his best fit's probably going to be as a strong side guy. Or, I mean, I like him, honestly, as a Mike linebacker too. He's got a classic look there. So there's a lot of good that I think that they can do with this defense this offseason. I like the cornerstone players they have right now. I think there are some question marks. You don't know what you're going to get out of certain guys. Kiko is a bit of a question mark just because, we've talked about, if you've got him on the field, it's hard to call him a 3-down linebacker when you're worried about putting him in coverage on the tight end, and he's just getting absolutely eviscerated by the guy every time. So, I think this team is looking for a more completeness out of its linebacker group. I think Raekwon McMillan coming back definitely gives you a boost. And, rising tide will raise all ships there. But I think that's why ultimately I love the idea of a defensive tackle at 11. If they go there, great. But I honestly think that it's got to be Smith or Edmonds if one of those guys is available at 11, because it takes care of a need that's been a problem in Miami for a long time.
Did Ron disappear again?
I did not. But what I was going to say is I love the prospect of thinking about Friday night's over, and we drafted a linebacker first round, and then in the second and third rounds, we ended up with a tight end and a defensive tackle. I mean, don't you think we'd all feel so much better about the Dolphins if by Friday night we came out of there? And then it's like on Saturday, we just relax, crack open some beers or some water, Lewis, whatever you want to do, and and just sit there and let them tinker with, are they going to, just let them play with the other positions, get some depth, or get that quarterback, in the 4th round to develop, or, just another wide receiver that, they'll probably do it. They always do. Or, another linebacker or whatever it is, some more depth in cornerback. It's endless. They could go so many different ways with that. A running back. I think that's what I'd like to see. But if they need to end up at least in the first 3 or 4 rounds with those 3 positions, in my mind, to feel good, because I feel like they have a huge hole at defensive tackle, a huge hole at tight end. Maybe for me, I think that position doesn't worry me the most, but I think it's the worst unit we have right now on the team. and we definitely need to add a really good linebacker, and I think that needs to come out of the first round. And I think we have a great shot at that. I think 4 to 5 quarterbacks could go in the first round. I think we're forgetting about teams that may jump up ahead to go get a quarterback who, like Arizona or somebody like that, who's, they've got a temporary situation. There are other teams that could still try and jump up. Buffalo could still try and jump up. And go ahead and try and get a guy. So I think we got in a good position to end up with those 3 positions filled by the end of Friday night. I don't know. I guess that's a dream scenario. Don't know if it'll work out that way, but I'm hoping it does.
The only thing
we've mentioned the defensive tackles tonight. All of us have mentioned that position, but we've only mentioned Vita Vea. Who are other guys? Have you guys looked at any other guys in this draft? Is there anyone else who piques your interest in terms of being somebody who could come in and make a difference at that position?
I personally haven't looked at anybody else, but I believe that there's been like the Dolphins are apparently like this is something about Brandon Barry. I'm sorry, this is about Barry Jackson, and they've been looking at some guys like defensive tackle Richard McIntosh Jr. I don't know who that is, but that's somebody that they're looking at. Also, Kendrick Norton apparently. So I don't know. There's options out there. I haven't really taken a big long look at defensive tackles simply because, like, again, obviously they're not anywhere close to Ndamukong Suh, but since I like Devon Godshaw and Vincent Taylor, and I still think that Jordan Phillips has talent when properly motivated, I still feel like that defensive tackle is not as big a need. And this is the philosophy that I've been preaching for such a crazy long time, and everybody looks at me like I'm crazy, but I'm gonna keep saying it until the cows come home. I don't think that the defensive line is quite as important as we're making it out to be, and I think that the linebacker position has been severely underrated in so many years past. Like, I keep looking at these past defenses, and what has been the common denominator in all of the Dolphins defenses that have fallen flat on their face? It has been rotten linebacker play. We have had, like, let's pretend that Ndamukong Suh was still around. For the past 3 years or so, we have had Ndamukong Suh at the defensive tackle position. We have had Cameron Wake, and we've had another guy on the other end who is either an overachieving Andre Branch or some other person, and Jordan Phillips every once in a while making a big play. But who have we had at linebacker? It has been abysmal at linebacker. And for years and years and years, the last time that the Dolphins defense was truly dominant that I can remember, it was the likes of Carlos Dansby, Kevin Burnett, and those guys who were actually very strong, good linebackers who knew what they were doing and could handle their job well. And then as soon as Philbin came in and sent those guys packing, and brought in Philip Wheeler and Donnell Ellerbe, this defense was never the same. They showed flashes of being a great defense, but it never actually stuck. And so even with incredible defensive lines, it's still been horrible defense. Why? I still think that the only thing that we haven't really addressed is linebacker, and I think that's why. I feel like that if we address the linebacker position, really put some really talented guys in there, then the defensive line isn't going to matter as much as we think it is, because as long as Godshaw and Taylor and Phillips can at least move some people out of their way or at least hold them at bay, then the linebacker core will have enough to actually keep things from getting very bad. I think that it'll actually be an improvement even with the loss of Suh, because the linebackers are going to be strong. That's just my thoughts on it. I'm just looking at the past history of the defenses of the Dolphins. They've invested so much time and effort into that defensive line, and nothing has changed. So I'm thinking that if you fix that linebacker core, make it one of the top linebacker cores in the whole NFL, I think you'll notice a big difference.
I think
you weren't a fan of Aiken Adele.
Okay.
Aiken Adele. I remember the name, but I don't remember much of his play.
Okay, well, that's fine. I don't know. I completely disagree with you. I think it starts in the trenches, but I also think it's something where you need both. And you just mentioned, I mean, we'll take it a step further in terms of when this defense was really damn good. Like when you had Jason Taylor rushing at defensive end, you had Zach Thomas. I mean, you had an incredible corner tandem back there, as good as this team will ever have, in my opinion. I mean, you need multiple levels here. I mean, honestly, if you're making it awfully hard on your linebackers if you're disregarding really loading up front and keeping those guys clean.
Well, I'm not saying disregard it, Keith. I'm not saying disregard it, but I'm saying that the common denominator for these rotten defenses has been the linebackers.
The linebackers have been, I mean, like I mentioned earlier that, I mean, we've been torn up by tight ends for eons, apparently. But I mean, you need multiple levels here. I would love to be able to look at each level of our defense and say, I like the personnel we have in place there. I like what we have at corner. I like some of the guys on the defensive line. It needs work, though. I mean, I love Charles Harris. I think that's going to end up being a really important moment for us when we decide to pick him. And again, a guy we've been able to coach up, and it's like, look, he didn't stop the run at Missouri, but we're going to bring him in, and we're going to hope to add that facet to his game. We'll see what happens with Robert Quinn. I have high hopes there. Raekwon McMillan. I mean, those are two levels where at 11, or I mean, even if you want to get cute and trade back, because there are some really good defensive tackles who are going to be available at that spot. And like Maurice Hurst just had his pro day was meh, but I mean, coming off the whole thing where they weren't sure about his heart, he went to the combine, it didn't check out, so on and so forth. But I love him as a prospect. His tape is ridiculous. Taven Bryan out of Florida is ridiculous too, and I think will end up being probably like a mid to late first round pick because he's awesome with his first step as like a 3 technique. But I think that we've had a lot of talent up front, but I think that there are times where like I wouldn't ever consider Ndamukong Suh a proper 3 technique. I mean, he's a guy like he occupies multiple blocks. I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find someone who's stronger than him. I mean, like he is just an absolute beast at that position. But I mean, in terms of like, I mean, when you look at guys and you're like, okay, I think that Jordan Phillips is absolutely a guy you would use as a 1 technique defensive tackle. I mean, and with the added benefit that I mean, he's got very good athleticism for somebody that huge. I mean, and when he puts it together, I mean, like he is dominant, but I mean, like it fluctuates. There are times where you're like, man, where did Phillips go? Suh, the ultimate really like multiple block eater, can still get in the backfield. I mean, you're obviously going to miss that, but I mean, it's not like we had like a 3 technique guy in there who was like a guy who was just really quick off the first step, constantly tearing into that backfield and whatnot. It's just in terms of quickness, not somebody who gets in there with strength like Suh. But I think that you're going to kind of see a little bit of a shift in terms of the guys they're looking at in terms of what they bring to the table. Because I think that works in concert with linebacker, which needs to be upgraded big time. So, I mean, it's stuff to get excited about, and I'm excited to see who they add. Because I mean, there are multiple guys in there. Man, that's going crazy right now. But it's got to work together.
I think you were very accurate there at the end there, Keith. I think that what Miami's looking for should change a little bit. I think that was part of the reason we saw them agreeable to let Suh go. Suh's obviously rare because he can really do about anything because he's so strong and he's also quick. And so you can have Suh occupy blockers or you can have Suh try to shoot gaps. I think what the Dolphins want is a big, very difficult to move defensive tackle that can help keep linebackers clean. And that fits in very well. If you do draft somebody like Roquan Smith in the first round and you're going to have 3 fast linebackers, it fits very well to bring in a huge defensive tackle that really occupies blockers. And so obviously Vita Vea would be amazing, but I don't expect that's Miami's target. Now, if he's what's there and the guys they want off the board, great. He's huge. You know, he's got a little bit of quickness in there to redirect running backs. You know, if you're looking for a big anchor guy that's kind of a nose tackle type, he's great. But you can get, and to Miami's credit, they've had success with Greer last year, getting some of these defensive tackles not as first round picks. And so you could take somebody, say BJ Hill from North Carolina State. He's 321 pounds. He's a guy you can probably get in the middle of the draft. Doesn't need to come in and be an all-world defensive tackle. If you want to run formations where you're trying to penetrate gaps, Jordan Phillips is very good at that. So is Godshaw, and you've got William Hayes. If you're looking at not trying to engage and you're trying to create disruption, we've got the personnel to do that right now. What we need is that monster that anchors in there. And so I think they'll be able to get that player in the 3rd or 4th, maybe even the 5th round, where again, you're going to look at a massive defensive tackle. I think what you're going to see, a guy that's at least over 300 pounds. You could go get a guy like Hurst, from Michigan. He's talented, but that's what you have already on the team. And so I think it's a priority to get that big immovable guy, but I don't think he's your 1st or 2nd round pick. I think it's a mid-round pick. I really think they have to get the linebacker and the tight end in the first 2 or 3 rounds because those guys are going to be coming in to start. And you can get a big rotational guy that's not going to be playing maybe more than 30 or 40 snaps on rundowns. And so, and one thing I was going to mention to you too is, Lewis, we've had some great defensive lines, but our offense has just been inept. Our offense has been terrible, for 2 or 3 years. And if you can't score points, the other team gets their whole playbook all game long, and they can just run the football. And our defense for the last 2 or 3 years has been built to defend the pass. Right now we've got a whole stable of guys that can rush the passer, and we've got our defensive back set up that way to be able to play some press man and really attack the quarterback. But that doesn't do you a lot of good when a team's got a 10-point lead in the third quarter. They're just going to pound the football and play it safe. And so that's what really needs to change for our team to be more successful on defense. Is we need to give guys, like, if you can have Robert Quinn and Cam Wake being able to rush the passer, give those guys a 10-point lead into the fourth quarter, and you can just attack the quarterback. And so that's what this team needs more than anything. And so we've got to get that, which Ron has already alluded to. We've got to get that tight end right now that can help us to open up our offense a lot more than we've been able to since Gase has been here.
Settle out of Virginia is another enormous defensive tackle if you're looking for that anchor guy.
Yeah, I think so. I just don't think they have that anchor guy on the team right now. And even Sue, wasn't what his specialty was, is to be an anchor guy. And that's what they need. If you get a real big, heavy anchor guy in there, then that fits well with some different defenses you want to run. And so I don't, Godshot, I thought looked really good at shooting gaps, and Phillips always has been pretty quick for a man of his size, but neither one of those guys are guys that just push the center guards backward and move the pocket. And
so in layman's terms, we're looking for a Paul Soliai.
Exactly, Louis. A Paul Soliai type of player that isn't looking to shoot through gaps. He's going to engage guards and centers and move the pocket backwards, collapse the pocket. That's the kind of guy you're looking for. That's what I think the Dolphins are wanting right now at that position.
Yeah, I think you want one tech play out of a guy with like a zero tech body. And I mean, there are a couple of guys in this draft who get that done for you. So I mean, if that's something you're looking for, I mean, that is there for the taking.
Okay, fair enough. So, all right, we're going to go ahead and get this show started to wrap up. But one more thing that I need to mention is that apparently the Dolphins are looking for a kicker, and they're working out Blair Walsh. Yay, I guess.
Well, he's got a strong leg. I'm very disappointed we lost Parkey, so I'm not over it yet, Louis. That's all I can say.
Well, okay. To be fair, though, look at the money that the Bears gave Parkey. Like, holy moly! Like, he's a kicker. Remember? Like, I know that he was good, but I'm not gonna give a kicker that much cash. No way. But that's
it's a
just
tough
me.
Gig kicking for the Bears down by the lake and everything with the swirling winds and whatnot. That's not a gig I'd want. So I feel like they have to pay guys a little bit more to feel comfortable taking that job.
So I don't know, Blair Walsh, or they can bring back Andrew Franks or something. I think Caleb Sturgis just signed the new contract, so that's something too. I don't know. For me, like they say that running backs come a dime a dozen. For me, I just feel like kickers, I don't feel like they're that hard to find. Like, I know that we've had really bad luck with kickers in the past. I think we just need to, but like, let's be honest, like how many teams are going out of their way to find really good kickers? Like the Buccaneers tried it and it blew up in their face. Like they were like the laughing stock of the league for drafting, what was it? They drafted the kicker in the second round. We don't need to go out of our way to find a really good kicker. I think if we just find a college that had a good kicker and had good accuracy and whatever, that like, okay, look, kid, we nobody's gonna draft you. You're a kicker. Let's just get you in here, and you'll be our kicker for the year. How about that?
Well, I think the big thing with it, Louis, is the two aspects are obviously you have to have a guy that is almost automatic once you're inside 40 yards. You can't be biting your fingernails when somebody's trying an extra point or a 39-yard field goal or something like that. Those need to be automatic. Beyond that, which with Parkey was great, you want a kicker that can put it through the uprights on kickoffs now that they changed where you kick off from. And you always want that field position game to, not give these teams a chance to get the ball to the 35-yard line on a kick return. And so that's what I'm looking for. And with Walsh, I believe he's got a pretty strong leg, so he can probably, for the most part, usually kick it into the end zone so we're not getting returns back on kick return.
But have you noticed that the strategy for a lot of coaches and teams is to kick it around the goal line, the one, and just let them run it back because I guess the math is saying they won't get to the 25? I don't know if you've noticed that, but I've noticed that a lot of coaches were implementing that strategy, including Belichick.
I don't have an issue with it. The Dolphins weren't one of them. They were booting it through the back of the end zone every play. But if you're asking my personal opinion, if I were coaching, I would almost never return a ball ever if it were in the end zone. It would have to be at the one. And the reason is because there's so many things that can go wrong. I mean, maybe you don't make it back. If you're 5 yards short of a touchback, that was a stupid call to return it. You're risking injuries, and you're also risking a turnover returning it. And so how rare it is to run a kick all the way back. If you just do the statistical math of it, you're probably better off to always kneel in the end zone versus bring it out. But when you have Jakeem Grant and Kenyon Drake, I mean, how do you not do it? It's too tempting to not want those guys to try to rip one off. But I understand the strategy in it. But unless Miami, we have the same special teams coach and we have the same head coach the last 2 years, so I doubt they're going to change their strategy very much. I think they want a big leg A kicker that can kick it touchback every time.
Yeah, right. Well, let's go ahead and wrap it up here. We didn't get to talk about everything. We didn't get to talk. You know what? Just for the sake of respecting it, we do have to. I do want to address this real quickly. Dolphins, the Miami Dolphins, and the whole South Florida community lost a very special person this past week. Mr. H. Wayne Huizenga has passed away at the age of 80 after losing his battle to cancer. I will admit that I did not get into football by the time until after Huizenga had already sold the team. So for me, it doesn't sting as much. But I know that for you guys knew the team better when Huizenga was the owner, and so. Like, for everybody who's ever talked about him or everybody who's ever talked to him, they always said he was the nicest guy and he meant a lot to them. He meant a lot to the South Florida community. He did so much charitable work. He and Ross both have this philanthropic tendency. So rest in peace, good sir, and may all of South Florida will miss you. So. That's all I got to say on that. I know it's a little bit of a morbid note to end on, but I did want to make sure I got that in there. I didn't want to be like another week late on it. So that's going to be it for this show. Thank you, everybody, for joining us in the chat room. And thanks, Keith, for calling in and talking to us for this show. I really appreciate your insight on things, dude. So thanks so much for that. For everybody who was here at PhinManiacs Live, I want to say thank you for joining us once again. And we will see you all next week for another episode of PhinManiacs Live.